All right, shalom, y'all. Yes, yes, yes. Shalom, shalom. Yeshua, shalom. Hopefully, one is having a good day. The break of day over here. Yeah, early morning hours, dawning hours. Or, have a good afternoon, good evening, good night. But here, on this subject matter, thank you for tuning in right here. It's about black. I was going to call this black people, right? Black people. Okay, how the title go? Black people, racial or political? Racial or political, right? Black. Like, what's the meaning of black, right? Just sharing a few words, with a homegirl, went to school, it seemed like decades ago. You know what I'm saying? They say, old man. But you know what? It's kind of good when in the Bible it says, I've been young and now I'm old. Like, to be young. Because some of the YNs, and I hope ones do make it. But, wow, this world today and the confusion. And this is why I'm talking about this particular subject matter about the meaning of black. So going from, I'm talking about this and that. And now here we go from that to this right here, right? So I was kind of sharing a little bit of it. And I said, okay, I got to record this right here, and share this on black. Because a lot of people say, you see these memes from some of the ones who call themselves the consciousness community, right? Some of them actually call themselves black consciousness, but then they'll drop the black when they go against the black. And black people are very funny with this thing called black. Right? I'm not black. Look, I'm actually a little bit of brown. You see, I have a little reddish. I'm a little reddish brown. Or I'm a little bit, I mean, that right there is beautiful when we can really appreciate the different skin tones. You know what I mean? But our ancestors and the elders, they appreciated different skin tones, but they understood something that we don't understand about this terminology about black, right? And it's really deeper than it seems. It's deeper, than, was it porous? Like, it's deeper than it appears to be, right? What is black? And even a bigger question is, who is black? Because a lot of people talk about who is black, and then you ask them to define, well, what is black? What is the meaning of black? Right? I remember this statement when I was growing up, right? My nana, right? My her mother, but they call her godmother. Godmother. You know what? Godmother? Godmother, like God to say godmother, and that old Geechee Gullah, like, godmother. Right? Different ones have that different type of accent. Godmother, like godmother. Right? So she's like my nana, But I always took her as my grandmother, right? Didn't really know my grandmother, either my paternal or my maternal, very well. I mean, my maternal, I got to see her sometimes and everything down south and everything. Hail to the Geechee Gullah. Crack teeth, right? Let's crack teeth right here, right? Let's speak on this right here. So she would say something that was very interesting on this whole black thing, right? She would say, you may be my color, right? Which is not my kind. Some of the, brothers and sisters that have, followed and checked out this podcast, even on different platforms, different iterations, on the YouTubes and social media. You might remember some of the older videos. This was like a familiar refrain. You may be my color, but you're not my kind. Because everyone that's my skin folk ain't my kin folk. You remember that one right there? Everyone who's my skin folk ain't my kin folk. Yeah, you remember that. Yeah. We hail up to the ancestors, our ancestors, our patriarchs and matriarchs, especially here in this experience, right? In this North Country, talking about so-called United States of America. Well, that's a corporation, right? I'm talking about this North Country in the Americas and the Caribbean. To all my peoples, right, in the Americas and Caribbean, right? Yes. Greetings. So on that whole skin folk, not kinfolk, my color but not my kind, and that was at the time, I think it was like back in the maybe it was 70s. I was very young in the 70s. I was just getting into my, I was not even in my teens in my 70s. In the 80s, I got into my teens, you know what I'm saying? And so I remember her saying this, many times, because there was a lot of black stuff, black. And it's like black finally became popular, right? Black became popular at the end of the 60s with Stokely Carmichael, you know? So we saw who is black, or this leads to the whole black power, right? But a lot of people don't understand that even the usage of black with black people in the Americas and the Caribbean, people don't really, mainly here in the Americas, because a lot of things basically, in that sense, emanated, as it were, from America. You know what I mean? Even many things came from over here, right, and shined to Africa. This whole thing, because most Africans don't identify themselves as black. So black, if we look at its origin, it's uniquely a so-called black American, right? Or the so-called, before that, the Negro American. Come in, the Negro term, UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, Marcus Garvey's things, you know, Marcus Garvey's ting, you know what I'm saying? You know, Marcus Garvey's thing, the Garvey thing. You remember that right there. Yeah, but then what people often forget is the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, right? Now, brothers and sisters, full disclaimer, you know, I am a member, have been a member, you know, but am a member, you know, the first unit, you know, duly elected to national president, you know, and of course, you know, on this platform, you know, I bring forward, but we don't really, you know, everything has its proper order. That's why I'm doing this video on black and want to give people the real origin. Because you hear about like FBA, you know? And now I share a lot with FBA because I'm a black American, right? Now, I do have certain questions about certain things and also some advice and counsel to put forward if anyone is willing to receive it. But be that as it may, because many of y'all know a lot of things that we said before that were true, you know, for decades ago, you know, now become popular. A lot of other people are saying it. People are telling me, oh, you know, so-and-so is saying something that you first said. I remember back in the days, remember the videos you used to do? And I'd be like, yeah, you know? And in a sense, we do have influence, even though we might not be a big channel and have a large viewing or whatever else, we do have influence. You know what I'm saying? Because the truth, you know, the truth itself is the most influential thing, right? But, you know, the truth goes through a lot of things before it's really recognized and received well as the truth. See, truth goes through, when people are not really ready for the truth, you know, I want to know the truth. You're not ready for the truth. You know, you can't handle the truth. You remember that one right there? Yeah, truth goes through the same stages of grief. Look up the stages of grief, y'all. Look up the stages. Pause this right here and just look up the stages of grief. Stages of grief. There's about 5 or so. Some people add a couple of other stages or intermediate stages, but the original, like I think 5 or so stages of grief. You know what I mean? The 5 stages of grief. You know, why is this important? Because let's touch on what are these stages of grief. All right, so right here, it's a psychological model. We're talking about a psychological model. Remember the psychological, going back to the root idea, suke, right, is the soul, right? The soul, what's called the soul is the suke, right? Except in modern Gentile, you know, philosophy, they question I won't say the existence, whether the soul exists. But what's interesting is the same words, psyche, suke, that's like in the Bible, like it's in the New Testament, brings us a sense of the soul. It's talking about the psychological state, right? So we're talking about a psychological, like a mind state, a psychological state. And the word logos or logical come from logos. In the beginning was the word. So it's like the soul word, like a mental word, right? Right. So truth goes to the same stages as the stages of grief, right? Most ones that are not in the truth, when a powerful truth hits them, they go through the stages of grief. They might go through the first stage, is the grief, right? The stages of grief, this was something brought up by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right? They are common emotional responses, psychological soul responses to loss, right? So people who held to a lie, when you reveal the truth about it, it's like a loss, right? Right? Including these stages are denial. So first you tell them the truth. They deny, that's not right. Right? No. Right? That's not right. Right? Anger. They go through anger. Then when they recognize, well, you know what? I've been denying this, but I've been denying something that's true. Now they anger themselves, right? And they anger the person or the people who brought the truth to them, right? And then they go through this stage called bargaining. You ever, you know, told the truth to somebody and then you find that they're bargaining? They're kind of bargaining. Well, okay, I get what you're saying, you know. Okay, that is correct, you know what I mean? But what about, you know, this bargaining stage, right? And then, you know, if you, you know, out barter and bargain them, right, with the truth, then they go to this depression. because they begin to recognize I've been resisting this thing that's true. You know what I'm saying? What's wrong with me? It's a psychological, it's a mental, it's actually a mental health situation, right? You know, and then we have acceptance. And finally it comes to the point of, okay, all right, yes, I agree with you, yeah. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, that is the truth. You know, is acceptance. And many times in that last stage of acceptance, it becomes almost like they always knew it was so. They always knew. It's almost like they forget there was a time, you know what I mean, when they were in a state of denial. They forget there was a time when they were angry, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Now you notice that some black people, I'm not gonna say a lot because I can't really let's say quantify it. You know what I'm saying? But it seems like black people questioning this use of black people. Now with FBA, it's interesting, but you know, the movement, you know, that movement, it needs some, what do you call it, guardrails, guidelines, what it needs is the truth, right? So when we talk about the so-called FBA, right, movement, right, let's take off the F for a moment, because nobody want to curse right here. Foundational, okay, I get all that talk and everything, but let's go back to the old term of Black American, right? When do we become Black American? We see at the time of Garvey, right? Remember at the time of Garvey? At the time of Garvey, what were we? Right? At the time of Garvey, right? We still call ourselves Negro, right? That's back in like the 20s, right? Remember that? This is perhaps the first, I'll say it like this is the first major pronouncement, right? Major pronouncement, right? This is like one of the first times that black people who formerly were called Negro started to drop the Negro term. Right, this is history right here. This is kind of like almost like hidden history, right? But once you begin to recognize it, research it, and get the facts and evidence, you be like, man, how come we didn't already know this? We should have already known this, Yad. And of course, you should have already known this, you know. But that's what I say is like, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, right? So hopefully, this is freeing for many ones. One of the first times and places, right, that we have formerly known Negro people called Negro, because we've been called Negro, you know, all since 1865, or colored, and, you know, every name, as we say, every name other than being a child of God, right? Right? But be that as it may, this is the preamble to the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Now, this is one of my old Constitution books. I kind of like it, but it's so worn out. Had it for, it seemed like decades, right? The Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Now, if one want to check out, you know, who we are, right? We are the first unit of the Ethiopian World Federation, the membership, right? The worldwide membership, you know, as one. There's a lot of things that's going on because it's, you know, we said the politics, black politics, because black people don't understand, right, what it truly means. What does black mean? Is this a racial terminology? Some people are having a pushback to this terminology and saying, well, we're not black because black is crayons, black is a color. We are a nation, a nationality. And even to some of my Hebrew and Israelite brothers that be saying this spiel, so to speak, right, what they have to understand is that even the Israelites wasn't talking no nationhood, right, when they were still in Mitzrayim, right? Nationhood was only revealed when they came into the covenant at Sinai, right, after the Exodus. So there's a lot of things that are out of order. You know, this is why study is so important in any area. Study, education, you know, proper dissemination, tutoring, teaching is so very vital and important. So here we have the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Here is the Constitution and Bylaws book. I want you to see down here, right? Right? This is all historical information, right? Because they give you half of the story, but as one brother said, not even half of half. Sometimes you think if half of the story hasn't been told, when you see, well, what that half of the story, that when it's told, right? That you recognize that's more than half. That's like not even half of the story, right, has been told. But here we have the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, established August 25th, 1937. Now, there's a lot of other parties. There's a lot of things going on. Listen, brothers and sisters, I think I did this before. I could put a link, the official link, right? You know, if you trust the information that we bring forward right here, and you want to get with the, like I said, the constitutional membership, because there's a lot of ones out there functioning in the name, right? But this is what's happened to us as people. This organization, right, and the infighting, right, actually has its origin with the ignorance, right? It says, my people are destroyed, they perish, they're lost, and they get lost, they wander off, they get lost, and they're destroyed because of lack of knowledge, right? Lack of knowledge. So this organization established August 25th, 1937. Headquarters, right, New York, New York. Now, some would say, well, you know, it was black Americans, black Americans, black Americans. Well, yes. But see, the definition of black Americans then and the definition now, because a lot went on since 1937, right? You have to think about a whole lot went on, right? It's still the system of things, but the system is like a chameleon. It morphs, it changes, you know what I mean? Even as there's many changes that are going on now, you know, with the last Trump. Is this the last Trump? Could be the first Trump, might as well be the last. So August 25th, 1937. We can put this out as the, at least based on the documentation and evidence we're presenting, this is the first time in a major way that black people start to say, listen, we ain't niggers, we ain't Negro, we ain't colored. We're going to define ourselves, right? And this is how we define ourselves. Now, right over here we go over here. I want to show this right here. So once again, Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, Constitution and Bylaws. Let me say this, because one might want to know, oh, hey, what's going on with the Federation, the Ethiopian World Federation? I heard this, I heard that, and maybe encountered other parties. There's different separate parties, right, who we have a position in the ethos as a membership, right, that are restructuring the organization along its original constitution, right, and bylaws. And all of our arguments with these separate parties, individuals and groups of individuals, you know, that are taking the name and using the name in various different ways, right? Some few good things, but a lot of things that really are undermining the organization. It's like when the Bible says one have a zeal, right, for God, but it's not according to knowledge. It's amazing. People get into things, start doing it, become the leader of things, and don't even understand, right, the basics, you know, the knowledge of what they're doing, right? We find this in the scriptures. This is why we can tell that, you know, if any people are the Israelites, you know, that must be, or at least significantly include so-called black and brown people, right? Especially the black people. You see, because even that brown, I'm one who said black and brown, and some people have pushed back and said those brown, because, you know, recently, I only really recognize recently when they say brown, they mean the so-called Hispanics, right? You know, but what I get to find out, actually, right, is that going back to the same time of the 1930s, right, there was more, how can we say, Negro, right? Negro, let me say it again. Well, how did he use the word in Spanish? Moreno, morena, moreno, morena. Yeah, there was more moreno, morena. That's like a Spanish word for Negro. Negro is a Latin word. You know what I mean? And now we come down to the word black. But we're going to touch on black. Is black racial? Is black racial? Is black colorism? Or is black political? Which one is black? What is black? Right? See, the terminology has lost its definition, right? By, and I'm saying this respectfully, by a later day, right? They have a lot of information, right? But they don't really have the right intel. They don't have the right intelligence, the right understanding of the information that they have, right? Talking about what's happening in this latter day in time with the so-called black people. This is why when it comes to these issues and you hear ones, you know, on platforms discussing, debating or reasoning, there's a lot of confusion. So they go to Chat GPT. You know what I like to do? I like to go to Chat GPT after I do my video and say, okay, hey, Chat GPT, here's my video, right? Here's what I'm talking about. Here's my premise, my argument. And then Chat GPT, right, it presents information. Sometimes it's the same information I already know. So, right, some things, of course, it misses, but then it presents some things I might not know, or other arguments that say, you know what, thanks a lot. That can be like fodder for a next video, right? But on this video right here, it's important to understand the origin, right, of the term black, right? Maybe I'll call this one the true origin of the term black, and then I'll still address what is black, right? Is black, or what was black, right? Well, first we have to say, well, when did we start to call ourselves black? black becomes popular with Stokely Carmichael, right, in the 1960s, the late 1960s. I think, if I'm correct, it was like 1969. There was some rally of the nation of, I was about to say Nation of Islam, no, of the Sikh, right? The Southern Christian, the Southern Christian group, Martin Luther King and so forth and so on. So he was supposed to be at a certain spot, but he wasn't there. Stokely Carmichael, a.k.a. Kwame Ture, he was there, right? And he got on stage, right? And there was a delay, and they knew that, well, Martin Luther King Jr., he was supposed to be here, and he's supposed to be the main speaker, So Kwame had to take the stage, and this is a famous video. If you can find this video, it's out there, where he stands up there, and he starts to talk, and then he starts to speak about black power, right? And black is beautiful. So the whole black is beautiful, black power becomes a popular terminology and becomes its own movement, right? Becomes its own movement circa 1970s. But Kwame Ture, aka Stokely Carmichael, he's the first one, right? That really pronounces this, at the the civil rights. There's a big civil rights meeting and gathering and everything. It's in the late 60s. I think I said 68, but I think it was before that time, understanding all those things that would be. But it's in the later part of the 60s, right? Now, with the media and everything else, this really, like, black people now receive something, right, that was about roughly 30-something, about 30 or so years old, give or take. Right, 30 or so years. I just showed you when the Constitution and bylaws of the Ethiopian World Federation incorporated. Right, there's some basic information. If you go out there, check out the basic information on that. The website to really check out, Ethiopian World Federation.org. Right, we call this the official first unit site. Right, we've been operating consistently, constitutionally, longer than these other parties that have kind of sprouted up and everything like that. Now, we are having discussions to get this together, and hopefully this video right here, at least the dissemination, not the video so much, but the information in it, if that can be understood, digested, and communicated, right, hopefully it can bring us on one accord as our beloved ancestors, the founders of the organization, right, including our beloved Dr. Malako Emmanuel Bayan, right, honorable mention, you know what I'm saying? Yes. We're on, right, nearly, that now from this particular vantage point, 2026, you know what I'm saying? We're going back to 1930s, right? So now, of course, we can't get in a time machine and go back there and like really function in that time and do anything. And plus, if we do something way back then, we still have way down here, right? But what we can do is learn from that experience. So here's the preamble. It says, we, the black peoples of the world, in order to effect unity. So this is one of the first major times that formerly known Negroes and colored peoples, and other bywords that were used, finally decided on, we are black peoples, right? The terminology black. And then politically within the Americas by those black peoples here in the Americas. Now remember, the term black was not a colorism. It was not that you had to be blue-black, right? But included all the shades, of black, right? How could that be, right? Is it racial, right? Yes, there is a racial aspect to it, right? There is a racial aspect, like a race, a group of people that are very identifiable, right? But it was not just limited to black people here in these Americas. It don't say we, the black peoples of America, right? Or the Americas, but it says we, the black peoples of the world. So it's because of the black people, right, in the Americas, and namely and mainly the black Americans, but under that black umbrella, as we see it here from 1937, were black people from America, the Caribbean, black people from North America, South America, Canada, black people as far as Europe, and Africa. I mean, even certain black peoples all the way out in Asia, right? But the main link was, are you not as the children of the Ethiopians, the male children of Israel? Let's read this right here. It says, we the black peoples of the world, this is the preamble, in order to effect unity, solidarity, liberty, freedom, and self-determination, to secure justice and maintain the integrity of Ethiopia, which is our divine heritage, do hereby establish and ordain this Constitution for the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. So don't accept any of these divisions, revisions, or other things of the Ethiopian World Federation Constitution, right? Because in order for any amendments to the Constitution, there's one way and one way only, right? And must include, right, we, the black people who are members of the organization, right? So it ain't no kind of Johnny come, bounce and fly and three-card Monty and switcheroo. For real, it's not about that, right? And I understand, right? The later generations on a whole new thing than the earlier generation. Every generation is not the same generation. Some of y'all have older brothers or sisters or younger brothers and sisters, or, and you can see the differences. You're all our brothers and sisters grew up in the same house, but it's like you're all different generations and just people individually, right? So we understand that. But there must be certain basics that we can agree upon. Can we agree upon this is the preamble of the Ethiopian World Federation? And in this preamble, it says, we the black peoples, right? And here where it says, we the black peoples, is one of the first times, right, that so-called Negroes and coloreds and all the other bywords started to identify ourselves as black people. This was a major political move. Now we talk about politics, right? See, the politricks is what got people saying, well, I ain't black because that's a comic book or coloring crayon. That's a crayon color is black. Look at my complexion. Look at my skin. That's a fleshy-minded kind of thing, right? And this is why when we look at black so-called politics, like black people's politics, this is why the situation is the way they are, right? And now among black politics is being victimized by the grifters in our midst, right? They give us a song and a dance, about, look, there's white privilege and white people over there. And when the main thing is, how do we do our business, right? How do we do our business, right? And how do we maintain the integrity of what was left to us from our ancestors, right? Instead of switching it up, getting caught up on, individuals and egos and different things. Do we submit ourselves? See, this is what the white folks do, right? We talk about the white people, they have plans, right? The so-called, this is how a lot of people speak, and a lot of us have spoken, that, they have these plans that go on, like, they think about 50 years in the future, and even if the people who first dreamt up the plan, right, pass away, right, the other generation will say, hey, you know what? That was their generation. We have to mangle this and dismantle it and twist it up and change it up and do things differently. We can't, no, they maintain it. Right? They maintain it and sustain it. So we see plans of white folks. If white folks started an organization like 200 something years ago, right? There might be changes that go along, right? But you're not going to get them to say, we're going to start 2, 3, 4 separate groups and everything like that, right? The law should not even allow, but they allow and have allowed certain, how can we say, illegalities, unconstitutionalities amongst us. And I think it's because of the black connection of the Federation. I think it's really that. You know what I mean? And we go to them before we go to each other. You know what I mean? It's interesting. Black people say we're against the system. So we have an organization that can do for us. But instead of us working these things out, right, according to the integrity of what our ancestors did, right, we will seek to use them, right, against us. But maybe that's it. My brethren of mine, and Father, may he rest in peace, rise in glory. This elder, he's a Rastafari brother, Rastafari elder. Some of y'all know him, Salimi, Ron Solomon, Brother Solomon, yeah. And one time he had a brethren, right, that was homeless. He always had his own place, but there's another brother that didn't have a place, Rasta man. So he had a man staying with him, and, trying to tell him, okay, you can stay with me, but do this, that, basic rules and regulations. But the man was just wild, you know what I mean? And he was trying to, reason with him as a brother. And then he told me that he had to call the cops on this guy. I said, wait, fire, my mom be like, fire bond, don't bring in Babylon in, the Babylon, the police. You know what the elder said to me? And I remember to this day, he said that, he called the Babylonian for the Babylonian. He tried to speak to him as a brethren, as a black man, and even as a Rastafari. But this man was on his own stuff, on his own time. He's staying with the man, right? Like, I got an apartment. My brother don't have an apartment. I don't want him to be homeless. I haven't lived with me. But there's some basic rules. It is my place. I give him some basic rules. Like, I'm the master of the house, but I'm not being no slave master. But I'm telling him, hey, this is how we do. But he's violating everything, right? And then wilding out, acting like he's running things, and I actually moved into his apartment. Wait, okay. Since I can't speak to him as a brethren, he's not going to receive it as a brethren, right? Therefore, he will only hear and listen to the Babylonians. So perhaps at certain times we do need, to use outside resources, to accomplish certain things. But make sure we do this in the integrity, right? We're not doing this on a fraud. There's a lot of fraudulent activity going on today around this particular organization. And y'all see what I post. I don't go into this. We could use our platform, or our influence on this. But we know that the truth, right, is a matter of one's knowing it for themselves, right? I'm not going to try to make you believe. That's make believe. I'm going to present the truth, and you can either receive it or you can reject it. So the Ethiopian World Federation is the origin, right? The membership of the Federation, which included black people from the Americas, black people from the Caribbean, black people from Ethiopia, from Africa, black people from other parts of the world. Notice I keep saying black people, black people, black people, black people, because this is what our Constitution and bylaws so say, right? So here we go right here once again. Established when? Right? August 25th, 1937. You know how many black people from the Caribbean to the Americas, we being like as one people. This go all the way back into the so-called slavery days, Now, I do understand there is the need to delineate, because in certain ways, even in the Rastafari movement, there's been delineation against us who might not be from the Caribbean. Yes, I get that, right? But even that right there is certain ignorant individuals, right? Even from amongst our Caribbean and like Jamaica Rastafari brothers that push that particular agenda, right? We got more to say on that in this organization right here, because the truth needs to be told, right? Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. Right? We need to get free of this kind of this inertia, this lethargy, right? This disorganization, right? This confusion, even around certain basic and simple terms as black. Now, I know for a lot of other people that came in here to see something about, okay, you're going to tell us about what black is, right? Is black racial or political? Let me give it to you they say a nutshell, so to speak. Black, see, we're going back to who first used this term. What generation? What was their mindset? What was their work? Who were they? What were they doing? So when it says we the black peoples of the world, this is back in 1937. It would not become until 1960s, roughly after the mid-60s, 66, 67, 68, roughly around then. That's what, when you look at how the whole Black is Beautiful movement was in the 70s, right? So something that was announced to our people, right, 30 years later, it become popular, right? Stokely Carmichael is the one who popularized it. So a lot of history will probably point to the 1960s and will overlook, right, this seed right here, this seed of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, right here, right? And you say, why do they call themselves Ethiopians? Well, why did it say, are you not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, right? Saith the Lord, right? So we're going to look at this right here. So here we have the Constitution and bylaws right here, right? The name of this organization. So a couple of interesting things here, because with this was the root of true nationality, right? Because you hear a lot of black people, the 60s had a lot of the black nationalism, right? Kind of confused and disorganized movements. And what it was, we was following other nations, the Gentiles movement. Like even in some of our better movements, the Black Panthers, we say, oh, look at the Black Panthers and all that, And on a certain level, we do as a people like show than substance, right? This is why even our platform, more ones don't check it out, right? Because they're still on that level of show. They like a good show. You can give them a good show, you know what I mean? And they'll swallow a camel, right? And accept all the lies. You know what I'm saying? But right here, as we get to this right here, I want to show you something right here, right? The membership of the organization, right? You see what it says membership? Right? Section 1. This is Article 2, right? Article 2. That's really Article 2, right? Article 2, right? Right? Section, right? Article 2, right? Section 1, the membership. The membership shall comprise the black peoples of the world. You hear that right there? So in 1937, you had people that were still popularly called Negro, because it's one of the biggest organizations. Apart from this organization at that time was UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. That was the popular one. That was the popular one right there, right? Right. So this was for the black peoples of the world. So even today, right, there are some who says this is back at when there was membership law. Now, does it mean that the organization is only supposed to be run by so-called black Americans? Define terms. Black Americans then included, right, all the black peoples that were of one accord as black people. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't saying all the black people just here in these here United States, but the organization was founded in the United States of America. And you have to understand the laws at that time. Right? So when we talk about the 2/3, this is argument about the 2/3, what that really means. The 2/3 really means that at that time under membership law, it was a membership law. The corporation law was membership law. So you had to have members, and these ones, the majority of those who signed off for the organization to initiate it had to be so-called black Americans. So yes, black Americans at that particular point, but there were so many other black peoples. It was not this confusion as we have, between so-called Yardie against Yankee, or Yankee and Yardie, or ones in the Caribbean and America, as you see being pushed, by, many of the more ignorant proponents of FBA. Right? But here we have the membership shall comprise the black peoples of the world. So, see, this is how the terminology becomes a political terminology, even for what we might call black Africa. We call black Africa because the white man was able to capture some parts of black Africa. We're talking about like South Africa, so forth and so on, right? Right? So here, I want you to see that right here. So this is all from the Constitution and bylaws. I want you to see this right here, right? See some of the primary documentation here, right? The aims and objects, right? So we who identify as black people, right, with the nationality, right, Ethiopian, right? So the Ethiopian connection. Are ye not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me? That's Amos. That's Amos 9 and 7. Amos 9 and 7. So the term Ethiopian, if you study history, it used to be one of the main qualifying terms for what we would call black people, right? Black people, right? So in a sense, what we have here, right, is a reverse engineering from the byword that they call us. This is the first time we were able to identify ourselves, right? So there is the race aspect. We, the black people, separated from the white supremacy, Gentile, nation states, Anglo-American, white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant enterprise, right? Vis-a-vis, right? And we went to the root. Our ancestors went to the root connection right here, right? What's the basic aim and objects? This is what we're supposed to keep before the public. So those federation people, this is what you need to hear them talking about. Do you hear these? So when you hear people talking about federation, are they talking about this? Ask them, tell me about the aims and objects, please. Right? Can you tell me about the preamble? Right? Do you know the preamble? Right? Can you recite and explain the preamble? Right? To promote love and goodwill among Ethiopians at home and abroad, and thereby to maintain the sovereign the integrity and sovereignty, right, of Ethiopia, to disseminate the ancient Ethiopian culture among its members, to correct abuses, right? And this is what the called, chosen, and faithful constitutional membership, right, of the first unit of the constitutional LN1, local number 1 of the first unit is about, right? For more on that, Ethiopian World Federation.org. Hear me carefully, Ethiopian World Federation.org, right? The official site, right? And we said official site because this is a membership organization, not individuals, not we're a democratic organization. Members have to be duly elected, right? You're gonna hear a lot of people talk this talk, right? But let's walk the walk, right? So the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, right? The origin, right, of black, right, in America, right? Identifying us as we black peoples, and therefore even later on within the timeline and the politics. So black always signified, right, more of a political, right, than a kind of a colorism, right? Is it racial colorism, right? Is it a literal sense? No, it's a political idea, right? And we can tell this from those who founded this organization. Some of their pictures we have, and we see that they were different, shades and complexions, right? And none of them who knew much better than us today, because us today, the battle, really, if you look at the battlefield, it's easy for us to get the victory. But what's hard is the disunity, the confusion, and the ignorance, right? That ignorance is the real enemy. That's why it says, my people, right, are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So it's because of the Ethiopian World Federation, the members, we the black people, consisting of black people, right, from the 400-year experience in these here Americas, and our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, right, going as far as South and Central America as well, right, were members of this organization, even reaching, right, over to certain parts of Africa, and especially with Ethiopia. This is where we first crossed over from the Negro, right? Where do we leave the Negro behind, right, as a terminology that we would use to identify us? But when it becomes really virally popular, is from Stokely Carmichael, right, aka Kwame Ture, right, in the 60s when he announced Black Power, and then we get the Black is Beautiful, right, that whole movement. But we have to ask a couple of questions. What happened to the Black is Beautiful movement? It's like one's questioning. Because, see, the serpent is able to get you back into your flesh mode, right, to get you back into, that instinctual mind, that reptilian mind, that mammalian cortex right there, that fight or flight. It's like when the serpent deceived Hawa, Eve, right? Trick knowledge. You get the trick knowledge. Oh, we're not black because, you see our skin. Look at your skin. You see we had different complexion. That's what you call colorism, right? Stay tuned for, we got to break down and build on that one again, the colorism. Right? Which one is worse? I think Troy Terrain, right? Troy Terrain, excuse me, not getting your name, but no matter, Star, right? He said he had something on his site on the YouTubes where the title, the theme and the title subject was, which one is worse, right? Racism or colorism? Right? Colorism. So maybe I'll call this, see, there's two titles I'm working with this one video right here, this one presentation, this one demonstration. One is to bring forward the origin, right, the origin and use, like the origin, right, of we as black people being identified as black, right? But I think I still want to go with the point of black people. Is it race colorism, right? Like racial colorism, or is it political, right? And in order for us to say political, we have to present, right, the documentation and the evidence of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, right, of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Now, this organization, we also want for, as a disclaimer, there's a lot of other, like, people may be interested. Hey, I want to know more about the Federation. I would say go research it. I would say go research it, right? The membership, right, that I am a member of, the constitutional membership, right, the first unit, you can find us at ethiopianworldfederation.org, ethiopianworldfederation.org. You can freely submit your membership application. It's $1 for membership application, right? It's 10 cents a week, for dues. Anyone who's telling you anything else, this is totally unconstitutional. And we say, fire burn that. Fire burn that. Hata, hata. Now, we do understand, because we've spoken with, the other parties on some of these things, because, in being a duly elected officer, we do have to practice a certain amount of diplomacy with the other parties. And, ones know, if they check out this video, I don't have to say your names and everything, but, we've been dialoguing, right? And we've been putting out the olive, the olive leaf, the olive branch, and saying, hey, come on, like, drop those other things, right? And let's do this, right? Because the public is going to find out, and that's going to be the difference. Because remember, the membership decides it, right? The membership. We're talking about the membership who are members, not people who just become members and try to change everything, try to switcheroo. This is what's happened with the whole idea of black. That's why there's so much confusion around black, right? One moment, black people want to say, yeah, we black, when black is popular, blackish, right? And then, right, when it's not, when they're confused because they have a zeal, like the Bible says, ones have a zeal, right, but the zeal is without knowledge. Like, you really want to do something, but you don't know. You're just ignorant. You're going to be making a mess. You're going to be making things worse. And this is what's happened over the last decade or so, right, with the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, right? And that's what we want to give a full disclosure, a full disclaimer right there. But that doesn't take away what has happened later on in the generations, doesn't take away from the root of the truth of what we're talking about. So you see right here, the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, Constitution and Bylaws. Now, this is a good copy of the Constitution book, Chan. Right, I don't know if it's the same one I just showed you in the picture right there. It's all worn out. It's all beat up. You know what I mean? But it's just like our Bibles, or like any other book, right? You can tell, like a tool or something, it's being used, right? Some people, you see their Bible, and their Bible, like they haven't even cracked it open at one time. And it's like, I love the Lord. Really? I don't know what kind of love is. Somebody said, we made love, right? And the person never was in your bed, and you wasn't in their bed. How in the world did you make love? You know what I mean? Somebody, see, that's what we talk about, the grief, stages of grief, the mental health, right? Those mental health issues, right? Because some of this will drive one crazy, right? It's only the truth that keeps any sanity, right? The truth, right? Objectively, taking the objective perspective, right? And being 100% unemotional, right? About just the plain facts of the truth. Like, just because I don't like something, I don't have to be all emotional about it. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Right? And this is what's going on with this particular generation. So some of us who are a little older, right? Than some of you YNs, you youngins, we just got to say, for our part, right? We apologize. You know what I'm saying? Because we recognize that we're like the new elders, so to speak, right? And it's a big disrespect, you know what I'm saying, for the wisdom of the elders. I mean, this is going on many different levels among so-called black peoples, right? I say so-called because they don't understand what black really means, so I have to kind of so-call it, right, until we can get into a little bit of education. Do we have a couple of moments just to get into a snip and clippable moment right here, right, on black? Do we? All right. Oh yeah, it's a side point because this is Yadin LOJ, Lion of Judah Society, right here, here. And I like to say this right here.
Judah Society.
This is the real lion. Beware of these fake lions people are putting out. I know some of y'all, it's on some things, people have been using it, but see, this shows that why there needs to be a gatekeeper. You see, Deja's match? Deja's match means gatekeeper. Just leave it right there. It means gatekeeper, right? If you got too many ones coming in, going out of places, right, that they have no right to be in, and they're causing more confusion. Right? They're causing more work for ones like us. They're like, well, why is this so? What's the truth about this, Yadin? And I'm thinking like, well, you wasn't with us. You was with these guys. How come these guys didn't tell you? You wasted all that time, all that support over there. And so you need to also support this as well, right? Support this, like, share, subscribe, give thanks to those few donations that do come in that help to support the platform. At least even it shows that, ones and ones know what the right thing is. Right, it's not enough to know the truth, but it's more better to do the truth, right? But it's not good to do something that you don't even know, right? That's that zeal again. But here, this is the proper lion. This is a proper lion, right? This here is a proper lion, and of course, right, proper lion. This right here is an improper lion. What kind of goofy? Check out our video where we talk about the lion, right? The lion, all these fake lions. Right? Forget the name and the title of that video, but we did a video, right, on the lions. But we still see some people a few of y'all have picked up and recognized what's what, right? But this right here is not. This here is some later day CGI, something. I mean, some of the new AI does better lions than this. This is garbage, right? This is a garbage lion, right? This is not official. You see, if we talk about, our ancestors, the elders, and then we talk about, others, Europeans or white people. We say, well, look how they can have plans for hundreds of years, right? That's because used peoples, right, and this generation, right, you don't want to keep to even learn what the elders was doing and why they was doing it and build on it. You just want to wipe it away. Well, what they did didn't free us up. Well, one generation of white folks that had their plans didn't, do everything, but every generation did its part. So what I would suggest and recommend to you is to do your part, right? Right? So that's the fake lion. Once again, the proper lions, right? Right? The proper lions. And see, in this case over here, often, if this was above the real lion, I'll say something is wrong there, right? The order is off there, right? But because this is above the fake lion, okay, right? But ones don't know it's a fake lion. This is the rightful lion. This is the rightful lion, right? And this right here is the rightful lion, right? LOJ, Lion of Judah. Just want you to know right there. That's very important too, right?
Lion of Judah Society.
Because here we're talking about real international nationality, right? So briefly right here, we'll pick up on more of this because we do have to get into more of this about what is black, right? Maybe we can now touch on some topical themes, right, of what black is, right? So the color of power and sophistication. Black is incredibly strong and intimidating color that exudes authority and makes us feel secure and protected. Do you feel that way about black? Our ancestors from the Federation back in the 30s, this is no doubt what they had in mind when they said we black people. That was such a revolutionary move, y'all. No one is talking about that. All these so-called black scholars, I want to tell you about black scholars this and black scholars that, but they don't know this part of the story. They're just riveting and repeating just some pseudo-popular history. No, that's what the white man has given them. Just like when they talk about the slave Bible. They didn't want to read the real Bible, but they were all into the slave. They like the slave Bible. They don't like the real Bible, because the real Bible will tell you what your responsibility is. They don't like that. All right, so black, the color of power, sophistication. Black is an incredibly strong and intimidating color that exudes authority and makes us feel secure and protected, right? This is saying, I'm trying to remember how the saying goes before I fully say it right here, but it's on this point, right? Like about black. You see what it's defining black as, right? You know, but many black people don't see it that way. See, because you see, they are under and in that ignorance. They're like in hell. In a sense, they're in a psychological, mental hell, right? Because these false beliefs, they've been made to be naive, a lie. They think that when we talk about black, we're talking about that you literally have to be blue black. Well, I'm not black like my shoes. You know, these are some whack ass comedians. They don't know what the hell. You know, I mean, they are not funny AF. You know what I mean? Talking about, oh, well I'm not black like, you know, my shoe, my bag, my shoes are black, and I'm not black like the asphalt, you know? And then these very same ones that talk about these so-called pro-black, right? These are the same ones, right, that be insulting those of us that do have black complexions, calling them crispy and this and that. And you have to ask yourself, say, yo, what is going on here, right? And though we witness it, see, the difference in the generations before that really made the moves, right, that we are, what do they call it, sitting on your laurels or something, right? You know, this generation, right, and even my generation and the generation of like the children and the grandchildren to come, you know, and the grandchildren, right, we are kind of resting, right, on the laurels. The laurel is like what the runner in the old races, like in the time like Spartacus and those old kind of Greco-Roman times, they would, like when they run, they give them a laurel. The laurel is like this little like leaf-like crown that they put around their heads. You know what I mean? So they ran the race. Ethiopian World Federation members, Dr. Malako Manuel Bayan, right, and those black Americans and those black peoples in the Americas and the Caribbean. That's why we say it like that, right? Black peoples in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? It's all embracing term. Black people in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? Often this is seen as formal and prestigious at formal and prestigious events. Have you noticed that? How black is used in a twofold way. On one hand, right, when the others use black, right, they use black as like power. Oh, this is black ops, or this is a black this, it's a black tie, it's a black that, it's a black this, it's a black that, and it's like, woo, that's top stuff, black. But then they turn around and then they look at you and me and us and they say black. Okay, they're black people. You notice even how they say it tells you a lot. They say black. You know, like they got something sticking on their lips and their mouth and they're trying to get it off, right? Free up the mouth, black. Like, you know, and so black people. Now you say, well, why you say it like that? But then if they go into a black tie affair, they'll be like, oh, they don't say, oh, I'm about to go to this black tie affair, right? Oh, this is a black ops, black. No, they say it with, they change the tone, right? See, this is why it's a deep spiritual warfare in the Bible. Talk about spiritual, psychological warfare. A lot of people didn't get it. They're still looking around for something they've seen in a Hollywood movie. That's what they're looking for. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because you know Hollywood, you know, knows the scripture. That's how some of these brothers, goofy AF, you know, will be saying it. But often this color is seen at formal and prestigious events. This mysterious marvel arouses and seduces our senses with its elegance and sexiness. Interesting right there, right? To black out, right, means to be unconscious, to black out. Think about that. So when the black is gone, you see what I'm saying? Zoom in on it right there. When the black is gone, there we go right there. You see what it says? To black out means to become unconscious. So when you take the black out, right, I don't care if it's black or white, you know, that mealy mouth kind of way of talking, that compromising, that middle of the road. Remember the Matrix movie? Right? You know, these people are not ready. They're not ready to be unplugged. All right? So let them stay plugged in. You know what I'm saying? But to black out. So taking the black out. So that means when we first see the black being put in with the Ethiopian World Federation, 1937, right? That generation, right? You know, and see, we have to link with that generation. right? We have to understand what they did, right? We have to look at, what they did and accomplished in as an objective a way as possible, right? For real, right? Because see, a lot of ones and ones, I see that like the younger generation, they kind of rate things based on their feelings. I guess they probably learned that from their foolish parents. But you'll see that from one generation to the next. So that's why I went back to the 60s. And then notice the 70s was probably the last hurrah for black people before we get into, the 80s. NWA. You remember that, right? Right? Okay. Right? And so black. Right? So symbolizing protection, power, elegance, sophistication. The effects of black mystifies. Some say seduce, some say secures, some say intimidates. It reminds me of what they say about physics. Like in physics, they say that what is observed, how the observer affects what is observed. So how does black, right? How does black seem to you? Is black a positive or is it a negative? On the positive, right, side, black has formality, strength, prestige, authority, right? You can look at the word black as almost being synonymous with God. You know how some people just love God, right? And maybe they disrespect God at the same time, you know what I mean? Or some of them love God, right? And seek to do his will because they so much love God, right? Or some people question whether God really exists, right? But they spend all their time talking about God. You know what I'm saying? Those people that say that God don't exist, and I'm saying that it's not the God of the Bible. Nigga, you're talking about God in the Bible. But now you don't argue God in the Bible. Instead of just recognizing that you lost, right? And taking that L. Taking that to L. Take that L, right? Take that to L in prayer, right? Take that to L in prayer, repentance, you know what I mean? Repentance and worship, right? But on the negative side, black on the negative side, the thumbs down, right? Depression. See, black make women depressed, right? We say, see, this is what happened back in the 60s when black people started talking about black power, right? And black is beautiful. A lot of other people got depressed. Said, well, are you saying that only black people are beautiful? No, it's just saying that black is beautiful. Well, it's not saying that you're not beautiful or whatever other color or what you want to call it. It's not. We're just talking about, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You see, because something about black, as it says right here, it just captures them. Right? But it can also make them depressed, sadness, pessimism, black, and dominance. There we go. See, now is dominance really a negative thing? Right? Is dominance a negative thing? Fear, you remember that? Remember that album? Fear of a what? What kind of planet was it? It was Fear of a Black Planet. There we go. Right. Fear of a Black Planet. Once again, positive formality, strength. Too black, too strong. You remember that? Too black, too strong. Right? Prestige. Authority. Right? Black. See, that's why during the 70s, we get Jesse Jackson and others that push to call us African American. Not that we didn't identify with Africa or that we came from Africa or our links as black people in the Americas and Africa. No. But why did he want to push this African American? Because the system already did its kind of existential threats matrix, right? And they recognize in doing that existential threats matrix, that, if these black people keep up on this black power and black is beautiful, because of just the power of what black is in the real world. So it has its positive side, but yeah, it can have what you could call a negative side or the opposite, right? Because every reaction, right, deserves an equal and an opposite reaction, right? That's just facts. So let's look at the effects of black. Mystifies. They say seduces. We can say it's attractive. Let's say it like that, because people say, oh, when we say seduce, they're gonna think sex. But hey, that's still part of black, right? You in the black, you know. When you're in the black in business, that means your business is profitable. You know that, right? Right? When you're in the black, that's like a good thing. Thumbs up, right? It secures. The effects of black, it secures, right? But it also, this is the effect. This is one of the effects. Just have to deal with it, right? Objectively, it intimidates black people. You see, we as black people, if I hear that, oh, black. See, because these other aspects of the word, they hear it. You see, when you hear black people, all you think of, right, is part of how the cracker colonizer, right, is a generational, right, curse. See, a generational curse, we talk about the generational curse and the way they talk about it, there is a kind of generational curse, right? The generational curse is that what our previous generations did for our well-being, most of the generation now has forgotten or thrown it on the side, right? Or out of ignorance, right? Think of it as not being relevant, right? But then they're fighting up against the so-called white supremacy and white privilege, and that is a whole generational thing. Remember, y'all's the one who say that white people, they have plans, and their plans are not just for like a year and a day, but their plans go on for decades. They be thinking about like generation thing, and we can tell this when we study history, even recent history. You know what I mean? Even the United States of America has gone through a lot of ups and downs, but they built that right to last, right? And although it might not ever last, right? But look how long it has gone on, right? For all of its flaws and warts, right? And how even our ancestors, right, were able to effectively, work within that system to get us to the point now that we can complain like they didn't do nothing. Ain't that something? Right? Ain't that something? Right? So black intimidates, symbolizes. So what does black symbolize? Right? Protection. Right? Power. There we go. Black. So think about it. If black in itself as a word, right, in the 360, right, of its psycho, spiritual, right, and psycho-political, right, connection, right, symbolizes power. Then you're saying black power. So black already symbolizes power. It's like you're saying power, 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 right? Wow, that's a lot of power. That's high power, right? And also, right, elegance. Notice how some of these so-called, the white folks, right, historically, right, and in these kind of stereotypical ways, right, that would have, like an elegance, like a dance, black tie affair. Oh, you look so good in your tuxedo, black tie, and I'm gonna wear my black dress and the black this and the black that, right? There's elegance for them, right? See, back in their overtly racist days, black men come in, right? This black man, right? And he come in, he wearing white. Where they say, hey, my friend, you're wearing the wrong clothes. They'll just say, you are black. He could be wearing black, a black tie. They say, well, what you doing here, right? It's too much elegance, right? It's that elegance that just makes you want to bend the knee. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall tell. Make you want to bend the knee, bend the knee, right? And it's sophisticated, right? This is just one of the memes here. Because we have to talk about this. But a lot of people putting out their ignorance, right? They're not even doing the decency to go study. Or they study one thing and because they have poor mental reasoning capacities, they're not really able to break it down, right? They almost get stuck in the trap. You know what I'm saying? In other words, they're reading the book, but they don't have no comprehension. They say listening is an art. Well, if listening is an art, then reading, comprehension, that's a science. Black is authoritative. That's the problem, y'all. All this other yik-yak they want to tell you. Black is authoritative, powerful. It evokes strong emotions. And too much black can feel overwhelming, right? And notice, right here, we are just sampling, right, some of the better information that's out there. Just to show you that this is what others say about black. You say, y'all being like narcissists, narcissist falling in love with his own image, right? Look at himself. But it's like when Christ said, he said, what do people say about me? What do others say about black, right? And so-called blackness, right? And then we're going to ask you the other question Moshe Yeshua asked. What do you say, right? But too much black can feel overwhelming. What do they call it today? They have a saying for this, black fatigue. You heard about that? Black fatigue. What the hell? Yeah, there's such a thing called black fatigue. Black fatigue. I guess that's too much black. Too much black, right? Can feel overwhelming. Are you saying too much black ain't a good thing, right? Black represents power. This is plain and simple, right? Sophistication, elegance, formality, mystery, and the unknown. See, black is not really, they call it a color. It's not really a color, but let's just call it a color for right now for the sake of argument, right? But it's the only color or spectrum that directly reflects God, because from that, remember, he created everything ex nihilo, right? Or yesh ma'ain, right? He created something from nothing. So all fade to black, right? Before creation, black. And who was in the midst of black? God. God, of course, was in the midst of black right there. That's the far right? So the last part, formality. Now, if you go to some charts, they'll say, oh, black is evil. Black means sin. Really? Well, leprosy was dis-ease that caused whiteness. Is white not a sin? Right? And they watch them go cherry pick verses, right? But look at this one here. Black, noun, a word that holds no individual or group, holds the right to limit or define. So this is an interesting meme. When I first saw it, right? I'm looking at it a little better right now, right? When I saw it, I read through it, but it's one of those kind of statements you got to read again. It says black is a word that no individual or group holds the right to limit or define. Interesting, right? Interesting, right? But what we notice is that in this world, they use black, especially even today's generation, descendants of do good, the liberal generation. Y'all got to watch out for these liberals, man. I know people say, liberal, what's wrong with the liberals? The Bible. What you mean by the Bible? The Bible warned us about these ones and ones. You know what I'm saying? Trying to say that they're trying to free us, right, from the evil white system and their white people. And then when we don't agree with them, right, then they are calling us these racial names. You notice that? You notice that right there? That's another related point right there. Black, right? So notice this right here, right? To make, become black, right? Noun, popular child actress of the 30s. Okay, black, right? The adjective, use of conduct or character, deserving or bringing disgrace or shame. Deserving disgrace or bringing disgrace. Oh, black. Now this is interesting right here, because this goes back to how the word was used during the high times, right, of racism, white supremacy. Right, this word here, this is talking about the black, the actress. So this gives the context of the timeline, right? It's somewhat anachronistic to our time now, but it gives us a kind of, by word and definition. Well, the same way we look at it today, this way, this is how they used it then, right? The quality or state of being, right? I didn't get the rest of that. I should go look that up and see what it is. Now, if we get into the actual etymology, which a lot of people are doing, going to etymology, one of our favorite pages, Etym Online, right? And one time there's only a few of us doing this, but it's good that others, because we see how actually words evolve. So the word was used at this time in this way, and then later on it was used in this way. That's the most interesting thing about words, how words can actually change, right? At least in the cult of society, right? It can actually change meanings. You know what I'm saying? And just a generation ago, they used the word in a 180-degree opposite way, right? So black, from bel, right, to shine, flash, burn, beleg, right, to burn, to gleam, to shine, to flash, blackaz, right? Right, burned, and then we have black, 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 right? Not black, but black, right? So that's Old English, you see, where it says absolutely dark, absorbing all light. The color of soot or coal, absolutely dark, absorbing all light. Now, as we go a little bit deeper down, this was interesting right here, right? I'd like to do a whole thing on embracing the shadows, the enigma of the black heart emoji. There are many ones who like to use the black heart emoji. So I kind of share this a little bit right here just to kind of, you can slow this, go through this right here, right? Or take a screenshot if you want, right? And then do that Google lens, and maybe you can find where it's at, if you're interested. Black is my happy color. That's beautiful, right? Feeling my power is all black today, right? Social posts, right? So see how things have gone like a 180, right? Right here, black, right? To all the black negators. So who is black, right? Well, we can address that picking up, but when we look at it in this original, right, inception, through the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, we the black people of the world. Notice how the media and industry uses black profitably, right? So if they can profit off of black, what is wrong with we black people, right? That's the question there. What is wrong with us black people? It's like that song, Burhana Selassie, Robert Nesta Marley, better known as Bob Marley. If Puss and Dog can get together, what's wrong with you, my brother? Right? That's the point. Right? Ain't it? Color changes over time. You see that? Color changes over time. So even this right here is a good kind of analogy, right? The ruddy, the reddish, reddish brown, the black, the different shades, right? But it still comes under black, right? It's still under black. I'm just touching on this briefly. Have you noticed that what fists are they raising up? They replace the black fist, the right hand. They replace the right hand with the left hand. There's a whole something I would like to, bring forth on that, right? Yeah, right? Different for a reason, right? Black people understand what we're talking about right here. Different for a reason, right? On the whole black sheep. Beyond conformity, exploring the significance of the role of the black sheep, right? The black sheep of the house of Israel, we the black Jews, right? The black sheep of the house of Israel, right? We Israelites, right? What does Babylon feel like? Rastafari be Israelites, right? Now, of course, when I'm saying Rastafari, I'm going back, I'm fading to the black. We're going back to roots. This is about roots, right? Right? Because a tree can't grow if it don't have its roots, right? So the power of being the black sheep, the black sheep in the family, right? It's all about the black sheep family reunion, y'all, right? It's time, right? I just realized, right, that that what the person says right here was that I'm not the black sheep of the family. I come from a family of black sheep, and I am their scapegoat. On the other side, I'm the black sheep of the family and proud. All right. Now over here, this is getting into this right here. Some have been sharing the old etymologies that black. When we go back right here, black, pale, wan, right, to become pale, to turn white, to become black, to blacken. So is it to turn white? Right? What's going on with this word here? Right? Pale, wan, livid, right? Ink, to isolate, to expose to the sun, to bleach, right? To lighten, black. Is this black here? Right? Remarkable. Take a screenshot of that too as well. Right? Looking at how black comes down to us, right? From black, right? From blegos to shine, to burn. Now think about this when we talk about Ethiopia, because the conventional, right, interpretation of that, the Western Gentile popular, is that Ethiopian means burnt face. So notice this, beleg, to shine, right? The root of black, blegos, to burn, right? Blackas, 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 right? Blackas, right? Right is black. And then we get the word black, 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 and then we get our word black, right? Just want to show you that right there. This is a good kind of another way to present. So the root idea of the word black, when you go back to the English roots of the word, means to shine. So do you see where it has a very similar and same burnt faces? Ethiops, right? Ethiopia. Oh, you see that right there? Which also meant basically black, right? So there we go. Now notice right here the word pale, right? Wanting in color, not ruddy. You see what it says? Pale is not ruddy, right? Dusky white, pallid, wan, as a pale face. That was the name that the natives used to call like the white man. He said, pale face talk with forked tongue. Pale face talk with forked tongue. Like two ways, you know? Like our two sides. That's how we showed how the word black is used. In some case, black is used, you know, when they use the word, it's used for power, authority, elegance, right? But then when we use the word, right, black people actually use the word, right, there's a whole different reaction. You know what I mean? It's almost like they use it out of power. To add power to something, they call it a black something, black in some way, right? But with us, when we say black, the problem is that most of our people don't understand what we mean by black. They got people on that real ignorant level that when you say black, you say, well, I'm not black like my pants. I'm not black like my shoes. I'm not black like my socks. I'm not black like the asphalt or the street. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm a little bit brown, so I'm reddish. I'm my, you know, who thinks like that? You know, fallen people think like that, right? A pale red, a pale blue, right? So are they correct that really the so-called pale people or so-called white people are colored people? Some say that they're the original colored people. I don't know if you heard that one there, right? Right? Uh-oh. Is this too black? Too black? Too black, right? But black, right? You know, going way back. Now, here's an interesting thing. That this whole confusion around these terms wasn't something that existed in the ancient world. Only when the Anglo-European, the so-called white peoples, started to come to the hegemony, right, or power, right? Something that is very much like latter days, last days, in these end times of the Gentile. I thought this was interesting here, the RYB, right? The RYB, the color model. You see how black is pictured as anchoring. You see how it's pictured as anchoring in the very center. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then we have 7, fade to black, right? So here we have this. This is also interesting right here. There's others that have picked up on it. The black versus black. Etymological differences, right? What comes from where? What are we talking about? Uh-oh, the beautiful black cat. Look at the beautiful black cat. Meow. Right, there we go. The black cat. Right. What's the origin of race? Good one right there. Stay tuned. The origin of race. Right. Race. Right. And this was also kind of interesting here too as well. Right. But we'll get to a little bit more on that. Right. Linguistic clarification of black. Right. Black. Right. And black. Right. So Moorish History TV did something on this. This looks very interesting. Even from what's here, I could understand the nuance that it's making. Because some people say, you know, black actually means white. How well have you studied this? Right? Similar. See, understanding means where there's two things that are very similar, the understanding will be able to discern the difference. That's what real understanding is about. So here, brothers and sisters.